Howdy folks, welcome back. It's Donnie again, and today I'd like to cover video number 4 of our series in Linux user management via the command line. And in this video, we're going to be looking at the user management utilities that are common to all Linux distros. The first two utilities that we are going to look at are related. They're the groupadd and groupdel. And as you might imagine, the groupadd is to add a new group to the system, and the groupdel is to delete a group. So let's take a look at over here, and let's just say that we want to add a marketing group. We'll just do sudo groupadd marketing. And that's all there is to it. And of course, if we wanted to delete that group, we could just change the groupadd to groupdel, like so. But we're not going to do that. We want to have the marketing group here for the rest of the demo. And then if we want to verify that the group actually did get added, all we have to do is do a less etc group and page on down. And indeed, our marketing group is there. The next utility that we'll look at is Usermod. Now, this is going to be really easy, and let me show you why. We've already seen how we can use the Useradd utility to create user accounts, and we've seen the option switches that go along with Useradd to allow us to set the account parameters in certain ways. Now, the Usermod utility is used to modify user accounts that already exist. And what makes Usermod so easy to learn is the fact that it uses the same option switches that the Useradd utility uses. So for example, if we want to change the expiration date of somebody's account, we can just do a -e followed by the new expiration date. And so we'll just go ahead and set the expiration date for Frank's account to 11/30/2017, and that's just the exact same option switch, the exact same date format that we would use to set the expiration date with Useradd as we create the account, except now we're just doing it after the fact. And we can also add Frank to a group if we wanted to with the uppercase G. Let's say we want to add him to the accounting group. We can now do groups Frank, and we can see that indeed he is a member of the accounting group. Now, one thing that you need to be careful of is that if somebody is already a member of a group, by doing the -G like this, you will wipe that person out of the group he's already in and just place him with another group. So for example, if we were to do Usermod -G marketing to add Frank to the marketing group, we can now see that Frank is a member of marketing, but he got removed from the accounting group. But let's say that for some very weird reason you want to have Frank a member of both groups. What we can do then is just do Usermod with a -lowercase a and a -uppercase G, accounting, and so now Frank is a member of both groups. So that lowercase a will prevent you from removing a person from the group he or she is already a member of. But other than that, pretty much everything else with Usermod is going to be exactly the same as you would do with Useradd. Just the same option switches and everything. This time, we're going to take a look at CHage. Now, the CHage utility can be used to just look at your info about your password expiration data. And so we can do like this, and I can look at my own data like this, and you can see here that my password never expires, my account never expires, all that good stuff, right? Because I'm the one who installed this machine, so I was not subject to any of those changes that I made to the default configuration files. Now, we can look at other people's information too if we have sudo privileges to do so. So for example, we can look at Caitlin. And we can see that her password never expires, but her account expires on October 31st. And we can do the same thing for Frank. And we can see that Frank does have an expiration date for his password because we created his account after we changed the default settings in a previous video. So let's say now that we do want to change this password expiration information. Well, first off, let's look at the man page for CHage, and we'll see the option switches. We have the -E option switch, the uppercase E option switch, which will set an expiration date for the account. So yeah, it's uppercase E here for CHage. With Usermod and Useradd, you use a lowercase e to set an expiration date for the account. It's just another one of those examples of how the people who wrote these utilities didn't bother to sit down and talk to each other to make sure that everything is consistent. And down here we see an uppercase I to set the number of days that an account can be inactive after the password expires before the account gets locked out. And we've seen before that with Useradd and with Usermod, we do the same thing with a lowercase f option switch. Again, the people just aren't sitting down and talking to each other to make sure that these different option switches for the different utilities are consistent. So those are the two things that can be done with either CHage or Useradd or Usermod. And then down here we can see the things that we can do with CHage, but that we cannot do with Usermod or Useradd, because Usermod and Useradd do not have the ability to set expiration dates or expiration data for passwords. So we have the lowercase m that we can use to set the minimum number of days between password changes before a person can change his or her password again. Uppercase M sets the maximum number of days for the person's password to be valid. And the uppercase W changes the number of warning days that a person will get before a password expires. So for example, we can do sudo chage-m5, for example, dash uppercase M 90. And so now we're setting the minimum number of days and the maximum number of days. And if that's all we want to do, then yeah, that's fine. That's all we have to do. But I mean, we can change just one thing. We can change everything all at once. It doesn't matter. We can do an uppercase E to set an expiration date. And that's an expiration date for the account. And we can do a dash uppercase W to change her number of warning days from 7 to 5, for example. And, oh yeah, we can use the uppercase I as well. Let's give her 2 days to be able to change her account before the account gets locked out after her password expires. And again, you don't have to do all of these things. You can just do one of these things or just a couple of them. I'm just doing this now to show you that you can do all of these things at once if you really want to. And now let's do CHage-L. And we can see that we've changed all of these data items for user Caitlin. Now, another one in here which looks pretty curious until you think about it. Let's do man chage again. And we have this -D. It's the last day. You can actually trick the system into believing that the user changed his or her password at a time when they didn't really change it, okay? And that might be good for cases like what we just did, because you can see here, the last time the password was changed for Caitlin was on January 15th of 2017, and her password expires now on April 15th of 2017, in just a few days. And that's because when you change the expiration date of somebody's password, let's say that you set somebody's account so that their password expires in 90 days, it does not mean that the password will expire 90 days from now. It means that it will expire 90 days from the last time that the password was changed. So right now, today is 12 April 2017. So what I have done is I've just made it so that Caitlin's password will now expire in only 3 days from now. So if you wanted to, you could use the CHage with that -D option switch to tell the system that, okay, she really changed her password on this date instead of when it was really changed, and that will keep her password from expiring as soon as it otherwise would. Now, the other thing that you can do with that -D option switch is you can set the date to 0, and that will force the user to change his or her password the next time he or she logs in. So, for example, so now let's do the CHage-L, and we see there that Caitlin must change her password. So let's simulate that Caitlin is logging in. And she'll enter her old password. And look at that. She now is forced to change it. So she enters her current password. And now she'll enter her new password. Except it's a bad password. It's based on a dictionary. Well, will she be able to do it anyway? Let's see. No, it will not allow her. And the password that I'm entering is turkey lips. And that is just like this. Turkey lips. Okay, that's my favorite demonstration password. Don't ask me how I came up with that. I don't know. But it's just a fun password that I like to use for demo purposes. Now, if I were setting this myself with pseudo privileges, I would be able to override all of these criteria, and I would force the system, I would be able to force the system to accept that password anyway. However, Caitlin, by not having root privileges, cannot force the system to accept this dictionary password. So she is now going to have to come up with some other password. So let's say that she wants to do this one. Okay, I'm not going to tell you what the password is, because it's something that I use for my own purposes elsewhere too. But this time, there's just enough complexity criteria. It was not a dictionary word, so the system accepted it. So Caitlin now has her new password. So the next one that we'll look at is the Passwd utility. And you're probably saying, well, what's so hard about Passwd? Everybody knows that that is going to be used to change a person's password, right? So if I wanted to change somebody's password myself, well, actually, I'm logged in as Caitlin now. So let's say that Caitlin wants to change her password. She can do that just by entering Passwd. And we can do like this. Except, of course, we set her up so that she has to wait a few days before being able to change it. Okay, that's good. But still, that's how a normal user would change his or her own password. So let's get back out to my own account. If I want to change somebody else's password myself, then all I got to do is do passwd with sudo and specify a user name. And I'm not actually going to change your password, but I mean, that's how you do it. Now, there are a couple of option switches with Passwd that you want to know about, and most of these you're not going to use. Most of these I don't use, but the reason I don't use most of these is because we have the same option switches with CHage. I just use CHage. I don't bother with all these different option switches in Passwd. But the one where I would deal with are the lowercase l and the lowercase u, where I can either lock or unlock somebody's account temporarily. So what we can do here is we can do sudo passwd -l for Caitlin. So now Caitlin will try to log in. And she won't be able to because it's going to tell us that we have an authentication failure. And this is something new that is with CentOS 7 and Red Hat 7. In the previous versions of Red Hat and CentOS, it actually told us that we were using an incorrect password. So they've changed the message. It now just says authentication failure, which is actually the way it should be because we don't want the bad guys to know whether they got a non-existent account or whether they just used the wrong password. So this makes it a little bit more secure. But if we go into the etc directory and look in the shadow file, of course, I'm going to have to open this up in read-only mode. But we can come down here and we see now that Caitlin, right there, she has this pair of exclamation points in front of her password field. So that prevents the system from being able to read her password, and it makes it so that she won't be able to log in. And then if I want to, I can just go ahead and do passwd -u, and that will unlock her account. Now, we can do the same thing with Usermod, except with Usermod, we will use an uppercase L to lock the account. And you see that one of the differences there between the Usermod and the Passwd is the Passwd gives you some feedback saying that, yeah, we have locked Caitlin's account. And the other difference is if we look in the shadow file again, we see that the Usermod only puts one exclamation point in front of the password field instead of two. But the effect is the same. Whether it's one exclamation point or two, the system still will not be able to read that password, and it will not allow Caitlin to log in. And then in order to unlock the account, we'll just do Usermod uppercase U. So this is handy for few different reasons. It could be that maybe Caitlin wants to go on vacation and we don't want anybody messing around with her account when she's gone, so we can just temporarily lock her account and unlock it when she comes back. And another reason it could be handy is because of something else which I completely forgot to put on the list of utilities, and that's the Userdel utility. The Userdel utility is used to delete user accounts. Now, if you are in a corporate setting, you have to be very, very careful about using that utility because it could get you into much, much trouble. And that's because we have laws, like for example, here in the United States, we have the Sarbanes-Oxley law, which dictates to companies about how much data they need to keep, about the files that they're allowed to delete or not allowed to delete. And if you use Userdel, the way you do it is just like this, just sudo userdel. And if you do it like this, this will leave Caitlin's home directory and her mail spool intact, but it will be orphaned. All the files will be orphaned. They won't belong to anybody. That's not a good situation. If you put a -R in there, that will also delete Caitlin's home directory and her mail spool. And that's what could get you into trouble because you might be subject to laws, or your company might be subject to laws which will require you to keep Caitlin's files and her mail spool. So be very, very careful about using the Userdel. Before you use Userdel to delete somebody's account, you need to consult your company policy manual to see if you are allowed to do so. So most likely, though, you're going to be told, no, you can't do it. So just use either Usermod or the Passwd utility in order to just lock her account instead of deleting it. So anyway, that is pretty much it for our series on the Linux and Unix command line utilities for managing user accounts. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.